Hey guys, you've heard of the Young Turks podcast because you're listening to it right now. But make sure that you subscribe and give it a 5-star rating if you like it. Thank you for listening.
Welcome to TYT. I'm Anna Kasparian. John Iadarola joins in for not only this episode, but for many episodes to come. How are you, John?
Oh, I'm just great.
John's in a bad mood because he's still sick, and
I just went through the American, like I guess, insurance and medical system,
right? To get medication. So did you find out? Do you have strep throat? Is that what's going on?
And nobody knows what I have, and I'm sure that what they gave me isn't going to fix it.
Okay.
But I did get to pay for it because my insurance didn't cover it. So that's cool.
Oh yeah. Well, I hope you're not supporting Bernie Sanders because a few anonymous people said some mean things about him to CNN, and so we can't have Medicare for all for that.
I will only turn against him if at least 4 people said something.
Okay, but only 2 of them had to have heard about it, and the other 2 were then notified.
Well, if those 2 talk to other people, then that might be enough.
This is a great way to start a show, by the way. Anyway, we have a lot of great news for you.
What, just piling up salt in front of the camera?
Yeah. The salt will continue today, actually. But we will talk about all the updates to the Bernie Sanders story later. I do want to make one quick programming note for all of you. Today's a huge day for Democrats in the primary. They're debating in Iowa, one of the early states, and as everyone's expecting, there will likely be a question posed to both Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders in regard to this whole, feud that happened over the last few days. We're gonna give you updates on that. Later in the show, we're gonna give you updates on the impeachment investigation. It looks like Nancy Pelosi is gonna finally take those articles of impeachment, deliver them to the Senate, and
yes,
the Senate trial will happen. Lots of news. So you know what? Why don't we just get right to it? So, there was a giant story that took up most of the headlines yesterday. It involved Elizabeth Warren accusing Bernie Sanders of telling her that a woman cannot be elected as president. Now, this was a private conversation that happened between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders in December of 2018, so over a year ago. And at first, the story was reported by CNN. And there were no sources named. There were 4 anonymous sources. None of those individuals were in the room as Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren had that conversation. So there was a lot of speculation about what was going on, and there was a lot of pressure toward Warren to just either confirm or deny what CNN was reporting. Well, she did finally put out a statement, and the statement infuriated me further. I thought a woman could win. He disagreed. I have no interest in discussing this private meeting any further because Bernie and I have far more in common than our differences on punditry. So she didn't give any insight into the context of the conversation. She just made a vague statement. She didn't quote him. She made a vague statement about how he disagreed. So that doesn't answer a lot of questions. In fact, that leaves us to question what happened even further. And so Cuomo invited me on his program, and I thank him for that because it's not often that you see progressive voices in cable news. And I was on with Howard Dean. We're not gonna show you clips of Howard Dean because honestly, he didn't say anything interesting or controversial. I don't mean that to insult him. It's just there was nothing he said that was like, worth discussing further on the show.
So he wasn't like slamming Bernie.
He wasn't actually, he wasn't.
Okay, well that's important to know.
Right, so, but I do wanna show you a few of the exchanges I had with Cuomo, and mostly I wanna fill in the blanks because these segments are so short that I didn't get a chance to make some of the points that I really wanted to make, so let's take a look. This entire situation is so incredibly disappointing and also incredibly stupid because in shutting down the conversation and saying that she refuses to talk about it any further, there are questions that need to be asked. What was the context of the discussion? Was he talking about it in the context of where the country is right now? And also, I would love to see anyone in the media hold Joe Biden accountable for literally saying the exact same thing publicly. No criticism, no backlash, none. And we also need to mention that Bernie Sanders encouraged Elizabeth Warren to run back in 2016. And there are multiple videos of Bernie Sanders dating back to the 1980s where he publicly spoke about how he believes a woman can win. And so
all of this contextual information is incredibly important to the conversation, and unfortunately it's being left out to paint a particular candidate as some sort of sexist when the facts just don't bear that out.
Well, we don't know what the facts are because Elizabeth Warren says.
We do, though.
But he said
we do.
it.
We have evidence of.
No,
how do we know
she
he
says,
said
no,
it?
no, no. I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm saying Elizabeth Warren says he said it. So now we've got something here.
So, okay.
Okay.
I said my piece. I was glad I was given an opportunity to kind of share all of the various examples of who Bernie Sanders is and what he's fought for. And look, we didn't even get into his record when it comes to fighting for women. He was supportive of reproductive rights before that was a popular position to take. He was supportive of the Violence Against Women Act. In fact, in an effort to get Bernie Sanders to vote for Biden's crime bill, they purposely included the Violence Against Women Act in the text of that legislation. And so he felt passionately about it. He gave a very impassioned speech as a lawmaker in support of the Violence Against Women Act, doing something about the fact that women were facing just devastating domestic abuse. We didn't get to all of that, but at least I got an opportunity to share a few examples of who he is, and I'm grateful for that because you didn't see that anywhere else.
Yeah, look, and I'm glad that you did that, and I would have the exact same impulse to do that. If we don't have any evidence from the conversation, and we don't, other than their obviously dueling characterizations of what was said, then we need to look to what else do we know about this person to help evaluate how likely it is that we think he said this thing, which seems on its face kind of crazy. And we can't imagine, I mean, even if I didn't know this stuff going back to the 80s, I would say he's not gonna sit down with a woman who's going to be facing him on the debate stage in 6 months and tell her, oh no, none of you broads could ever, he's not gonna say anything like that, that's crazy. But once you add the context, that's important too. And it's not like the stuff from the 80s it doesn't mean that he couldn't say something like that. You're not either a sexist or not a sexist in the same way that you're not either a racist or not a racist. It is a whole bunch of different things about you that exist on a spectrum. It's a cloud of different things. You can be generally supportive of a group but still believe something ignorant or something like that.
Right,
but it just doesn't make any sense that he would say that.
If
and
you're,
really fast, and one other thing, and it makes 100% sense that he would criticize Trump in the same way that he's been doing publicly every single day for literally years. He would say, yeah, Trump is a misogynist, he'll attack a female candidate. I've been saying that, you've been saying that, literally everyone on every side of this issue has been saying that same thing.
Right, I think that's what the context of the conversation was. Obviously there's no way of knowing because Warren has decided to shut the conversation down at this point, and that's, look, this leak came from her campaign. It's very clear. I mean, even Nate Silver put that on blast on Twitter.
Ryan Grimm said that he asked her, is this an intentional leak from your campaign? And she says no.
No, it's not an intentional leak. This is what I think happened. I think that there are two schools of thought within her campaign. I think there's the progressive school of thought, well-meaning people who want to fight for the right things, but her campaign has been infiltrated with these Obama-era officials, okay, some of whom I'll talk about in a little bit. But I think that they went behind her back and leaked this to CNN because they saw that she was really struggling in the polls. I want to be clear, this is my speculation and my read on it, okay?
That would be my hunch,
I don't think that she greenlit it, but I don't know. What I do know is she had an opportunity to jump in and say, Bernie Sanders is a good friend of mine. I do not believe he's sexist. We had a conversation where we were discussing the pros and cons of both of our candidacies. Because the fact, look, it's a fact, right? If you're going to assess your electability, your viability as a candidate, you're gonna think about all the different ways you're gonna get attacked. And so with Bernie Sanders, it's gonna be this socialist narrative, right? The socialist fear mongering. With Warren, yeah, I mean, if you're a woman, we've never had a female president in the United States. Of course, there's sexism in the country. People have had frank conversations about that, and I think it makes sense. To then take a conversation like that and try to spin it as evidence of Sanders' supposed sexism is just gross. And her statement left much to be desired as someone who considers herself a friend of Bernie Sanders. And I want to actually fast forward really quick to what the campaign is now telling its supporters and its staffers, okay? So there is a Twitter group where they communicate with one another, and BuzzFeed reported the following. Warren's campaign is telling key online supporters that their goal is de-escalation and warning backers not to accuse Bernie Sanders of sexism. So I'm going to give you exact quotes from this group from an Elizabeth Warren campaign official. I would be careful with the sexism angle when it comes to the Bernie Warren exchange individually. That's not what this is about, and I think it'll be really bad news for us if that becomes what this is about. I.e. press asking her if she thinks Bernie is sexist, the staffer told the group. Is that what this is about broadly? Absolutely, I don't know what that means. But no one here is actually claiming Bernie himself is sexist, regardless of your own personal beliefs on that topic. One other quote from this campaign official, claiming you're worried a woman can't win, flagging that she'll receive sexist attacks is something many, many people feel. So they're trying to de-escalate it, but this is the kind of, I would have much rather preferred Elizabeth Warren to include, I do not believe Bernie Sanders is sexist in her statement.
She has that opportunity tonight, doesn't she?
She does, and I hope that she takes it. But with that said, there's one other part of this Cuomo appearance that I wanted to share with you, and I wanted to actually get your thoughts. This is a theory that I have. I've shared it on the show before. I got an opportunity to share it with Cuomo's audience.
I think the reason why she noticed a dip in the polls, and if you just go back to the timing of all of this, it was after she put out her transition plan for Medicare for All. That transition plan made it abundantly clear that she was not actually going to push for Medicare for All. She was really going to push for a public option. Then you see this dip in the poll, right? Now, my problem with Elizabeth Warren is that rather than acknowledging the flaw in her tactic there and changing course, she has decided to bring up a conversation that she had with Bernie Sanders in December of 2018 when he notices a significant rise in the polls. Like, the American people aren't stupid. They notice what's going on. They notice that she's bringing this up at a time when her campaign is really struggling.
Now, listen,
I think it's a bad move on her part. I think she should focus on policy.
I hear you.
Yes.
He hears you.
He hears me.
Yes.
But then he went on to talk about how he thinks that the Democratic candidates are focusing too much on policy, on the granular level. He kept saying that. And then he also talked about the electability of someone like Bernie because he refers to himself as a socialist.
Yeah, there's a million polls, general election polls with him versus Trump. If you want evidence, that exists.
So that's the point that I wanted to make, but the segment needed to end. And a longtime Bernie Sanders advisor, Jeff Weaver, was on after me, so I'm totally fine with my segment ending so he can talk. But look, I want to show the polling, okay? Because I think the polling backs up what my theory is. And if you look at the average, the real clear politics average, and it's important to look at averages, guys, because if you take any one poll and you use that one poll to make a theory or to have a theory on what's going on, I don't really think it's that accurate. You got to look at an average of what's happening. So you look at all the different polls. For the people watching right now, the brown line is the Elizabeth Warren campaign. And for those of you listening in the podcast, let me just note what happens. You see her surging up all the way from June to about October. October is when she spikes. That's when she has a really great debate performance, and she touted many of her progressive policies. But then in November 15th to be exact, that's when she releases her healthcare transition plan, which makes it clear that she's not actually gonna fight for Medicare for all. She's gonna propose a public option, and if she gets that passed, in her third year, when she's gonna ramp up for re-election, she's gonna then propose Medicare for all. That is when you see a significant dip, right? And so that's the point that I was trying to make on the show, because they keep talking about, socialism is scary and Bernie is really gonna struggle when it comes to his electability. But when it comes to the policies, and so many people in the media fail to realize this, his policies are popular with the base, they're popular with voters, and it's not just voters on the left, it's popular with many Americans. Even a small majority of Republicans like Medicare for all when you poll them on it. And so I bring this all up because all of these identity issues that the media keeps bringing up and harping on don't really resonate with voters when they can't feed their kids or when they're in the middle of financial ruin because they can't pay their medical bills.
You might be right. I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, the exact details of how she'd roll it out. I don't know if I would say that 30 or 50 or 70% of the electorate could even tell you what the details of her plan are. It's possible. I mean, it certainly seems to link up time-wise. But in any event, whether that's the exact reason, you could still be right that she's been going down for several months, and so whether it's her or whether it's her aides or advisors or whoever, they're rolling this out because they're feeling desperate. Regardless of the reason, she's clearly going down in the polls, and this could be a response to that. And it's not like you should sort of expect it. I mean, this is one of the reasons, sort of the popular wisdom in primaries is you don't want to peak too soon. It's because people move on, they get bored with things. You could see in those polls, Harris jumped up and then gradually went down. Warren went up and gradually went down. Buttigieg went up, not as much as some people thought initially he was going to, and then gradually went down. The only people that have really been consistent is, for the most part, Biden. And Bernie. That's those bars are relatively stable over time. But yeah, I think it's impossible to say whether Warren was the one who chose to do it. She told other people about the conversation, somebody leaked it, and I think we are perfectly free to judge Warren on the way she responded to it.
Yes.
Whether we can ever say for sure whether it was her idea or not.
I think it's a fair take. Now there's one other part of the story that I want to move on to, and it's how the media has really, there are no winners in what Elizabeth Warren did, with the exception of possibly Biden and the media, because they've had a field day with this. And Trump, sure.
Maybe.
Yeah. And Trump weighed in. I have no interest in sharing a tweet about it with you, so let's just move on. So, no one has enjoyed drumming up nonsense gossip stories about Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders more than the mainstream press. In fact, there were a number of headlines and stories written yesterday in an effort to bash Bernie Sanders as nothing more than a sexist who has all sorts of issues with women. In fact, we have a JR-rated video that I want to share with you. This is just like a quick compilation of some of what you could have expected yesterday on cable news.
Wonder what's going on between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and what that must look like behind the scenes of the Democratic debate that's about to unfold.
Yeah, hey Harris, so the two progressive frontrunners and longtime friends now seem to be at each other's throats.
In a statement to NBC News, Senator Sanders called the charge ludicrous. I'm not sure that's a denial.
Progressive on progressive. It gets getting ugly out there. 3 weeks to Iowa caucuses.
The person we do not have an on-the-record statement from is Senator Elizabeth Warren. The next time we expect to see her, Jake, is on the CNN debate stage tomorrow night, where she will be standing one podium away from Bernie Sanders.
Margaret, I've been waiting for a real fight. I like fights in politics. This is about a fact.
Now they're calling each other out by names, and their fights are getting pretty personal.
My instinct is to believe her because Sanders had a campaign in which he had to apologize to the women who worked for him for not treating them as pure professionals.
I think, Harris, the question tonight is not, does this come up, but do we see the two progressive candidates, frontrunners, reach some sort of truce, or does this back and forth escalate even more?
She said that's exactly what he said. This is great stuff.
Yes.
No, it's amazing how much misinformation is out there. And in the case of Chris Matthews, first of all, he reads a small sliver of Bernie Sanders' statement to these accusations. And he's like, oh, it doesn't sound like a denial to me, didn't deny it.
Ludicrous isn't a denial.
So it's the most absurd thing. If you read his whole statement, which he did not do, right? He denies it. He says absolutely not, unequivocally no, did not say that, right? Look, I think that Chris Matthews is probably just this typical lazy cable news personality who didn't even read the full statement and just went off of what one of his segment producers put up on that screen, and that's it. That wasn't the entirety of his statement. Or let's keep it real, Chris Matthews doesn't exactly hide the fact that he has disdain for Bernie Sanders. So that could obviously be part of it as well.
It's also true of everyone in that.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFDR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Compilation, basically.
Right. Look, this is what the media has been trying to goad them into for so long. Why did her campaign do this? It's so stupid.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, and probably self-defeating. Look, they like it partially because almost all those people don't like Bernie Sanders. Like, you had reporter MJ Lee, who was one of the original reporters, talking to Jake Tapper. And I could just tell Jake Tapper, how much is he liking this news cycle?
Oh, he loves it.
That's what he loves. And so the media is generally predisposed to not like him, but let's keep it real, they probably don't absolutely love Warren in comparison to something like Biden and Buttigieg and stuff like that. And so they like that. They certainly like the drama. I've been waiting for a fight. I just want to see a fight. Who cares what actual effect it has? It has nothing to do with what they'd actually do as if they were president. But let's focus on this for a couple weeks. Let's ignore that whole, hey, we almost got in a war with Iran thing, and all of Australia's on fire. Forget that stuff. Biden finally having to take stock of his record on Iraq, where that's boring. Let's move on. Let's go to a fight. And then there's also some people. If your whole identity in this extended career thing is standing for one of the candidates, you kind of like this too, because finally they're fighting. Now I can just torch the other one. That's why a lot of people like me and you, and I talked to Em on my show today. I saw Varshini Prakash, the executive director of Sunrise, just I hate this whole thing because it helps no one in our group. But some people like it. They like feeling free to just torch the other side. And that's why there were people attacking Bernie Sanders viciously online yesterday and vice versa. People I want a truce because I think it's defeating to both of them and helps the centrists. But some people, they like being able to turn their guns on the other side.
Yeah, but I want to be clear because he's not the one who started this. He's not even the one who engaged in it. He didn't engage in it. The only time he engaged in it was to release his statement. But other than
Which
that,
was ludicrous.
Other than that, if you focus on what his campaign was doing yesterday, what were they doing yesterday? They were focusing on Biden's war record. That's what they wanted the conversation to be. And that's what we want. We covered that story as well. But my point is, I don't want anyone to get the idea, at least for me, that there's any type of false equivalency here. This was a leak from her campaign, and it led to a media firestorm that is disastrous for both of them. Whichever person or people from her campaign made the decision to do this, wake up. We're in a completely different era, right? So the disgusting, dirty tricks that you guys have played in other campaigns that might have worked out for you isn't gonna work now. And this backfired on Warren considerably. In fact, there was a hashtag refund Warren that went viral on Twitter. A bunch of people wanted Act Blue to refund their campaign donations to Elizabeth Warren. Who's winning here? It's stupid. It's just dumb.
I'm sure the Republicans are having a field day over the last 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah. It's just so frustrating. And then one other thing I wanted to note, they're grasping at straws. They're trying to find anything to smear him. This morning I saw a tweet by a political reporter over at the Daily Beast. It read, "Scoop. In a recording we obtained exclusively, a person conducting training calls for Bernie Sanders' campaign instructed a volunteer to tell voters in New Hampshire incorrectly, it's not incorrect, that he is the only 2020 candidate who supports Medicare for all. Then the volunteer asked about Warren." Then you read her article, by the way. Hannah Trudeau's the name of the reporter. You read her article and she contradicts herself in her own article. First off, here's a quick screenshot of what the article looked like. And then she writes, in early November, a person who appeared to be conducting trainee calls for Sanders' campaign instructed another individual to tell prospective voters in New Hampshire incorrectly that Sanders was the only candidate running for the Democratic nomination who supports Medicare for all, according to an audio recording obtained exclusively by the Daily Beast. The call was inadvertently left on a voicemail on a New Hampshire phone number. Okay.
Inadvertently, it was a phone call.
It's so stupid.
How inadvertent is a voicemail message?
Let me give you more. In the nearly minute-and-a-half long recording, the trainer explicitly says that Sanders is the sole candidate fighting for the policy. Okay, so where were there any lies, in the trading call?
Well, there's a lie in the tweet.
There's a lie in the tweet.
Because that's not what the phone call says. The phone call doesn't say that he's the only one that supports something like Medicare for all. It says he's the one that will fight for it. That sort of verbiage that's in literally every political ad. All of them say they're the ones who will fight the hardest and the best. That's what a political ad is.
So let me tell you the difference between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren in case you guys have missed it. On the issue, on the policy of Medicare for all. And I say policy because this is not a personal attack. It's called analysis. That's what people do. They analyze the differences between the two candidates when it comes to policy, okay? Does that offend people that we're talking about the policy differences in a Democratic primary? It's pathetic. All right, so here's the difference. Bernie Sanders has legislation for Medicare for all. He would want it enacted immediately, right? And there's a transition plan. He's very specific about that. It's one bill, it's one proposal. Elizabeth Warren said she was in favor of that until all of a sudden she starts moving closer to the center and she decides, no, I'm gonna fight for a public option first. And then in my third year, this is based on her own transition plan. Go ahead and read it, okay? In my third year, I will push for Medicare for all. Her third year is when she's running for re-election. She's not gonna push for Medicare for all. We all know that. So the reporter doesn't get into those details. She doesn't share any of that. She just says, based on her opinion, that it's incorrect to argue that Elizabeth Warren isn't gonna fight for Medicare for all. But how are you gonna argue that she's gonna fight for Medicare for all when in reality she's proposing a public option?
And it's all nonsense anyway. It's an opinion. That's all it is. Who's gonna fight hardest? They all think they're gonna fight hardest. It's a scoop. It's a voicemail that was left 3 months ago, minimum 2 months ago, that they're dragging out now as if, oh my God, we got access to this. Do you know that they inadvertently left it in a voicemail box? Yeah, they left it on 1,000 voicemail boxes because they were calling people and some of them weren't there. They're acting as if they found like papers that were left behind at the bottom of a filing cabinet or something. It was their public stuff. You could talk to any number of voters that talked to someone and that's the conversation they had. This is not some sort of major scoop and it's not new.
Right, it's not new, exactly. But the effort to demonize him for doing what someone is supposed to do in a campaign and for telling the truth, like he gets in trouble for telling the truth, or his campaign gets in trouble for just differentiating their proposals from their opponents in a primary.
He should really be leaving voicemails attacking himself. That would be classy, I
He'd get
think.
attacked for that as well. I mean,
Probably
there's
somehow.
literally nothing he can do without intense media scrutiny, and it's pathetic. We gotta take a break. We have more for you when we return, including, yes, the women of The View had a conversation about Bernie Sanders, and that's all you need to know, okay? We'll be back. Welcome back to TYT, Anna and John with you. I wanted to remind you all that we will be doing special debate coverage tonight. So our debate coverage will begin at 11 p.m. Eastern time, 8 p.m. Pacific. John Iadarola, Ida Rodriguez, Cenk Uygur, and myself will be on the panel. So make sure you check that out. You can watch live at tyt.com/live. Also, some really exciting news for anyone who's interested in having dinner with me, Cenk, and John. So Aspiration is a financial institution that we've partnered up with because they are, running their company ethically. They don't invest money in the fossil fuel industry. And so we really want to encourage people to transfer their money from some of these big banks that do invest in the fossil fuel industry into Aspiration. Yes, you do need an account with one of these big banks in order to transfer your money. But once you transfer your money, you're done. You can go ahead and cancel your accounts at one of those big banks. Now let's get to the dinner part of it. So Aspiration is doing a sweepstakes, which is super exciting. And so the person who uses their debit card the most, their Aspiration debit card the most in transactions, will win an opportunity to have dinner with the three of us in Los Angeles. And so super exciting because you get flown out to LA and you get put up in a nice hotel. And so if you're interested in this, just head to tyt.com/ dinner in LA to register to win. You have to sign up for a free Aspiration spend and save account. These are the accounts that I've told you all about throughout the last few months. It has all the perks and goodies. So you go to tyt.com/dinner in LA. You sign up for the spend and save account, and then you have to register your eligibility. That's the most important part, guys. So register your eligibility. Even if you already have an aspiration.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
Account, you still have to do this. And then after that, you're done. You just use your debit card, you swipe it, and the person who swipes the most gets flown out to Los Angeles. You have dinner with us.
Okay. Sounds fun.
Well, you know,
I wonder what we'll
get. A little bit of a prize, you know what I'm saying? I was just kidding. But yeah, it'll be fun. And we'll laugh, we'll drink, we'll have some martinis. It'll be a good time.
Doesn't sound like a party.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get to the, oh, no. I did want to read a few member comments because there's some good ones. Harry Knuckles says, do I need to get high before I watch this episode? I mean, you don't have to do anything, but it could be more fun.
Yeah, getting high before, get high, watch our show every day, why not?
Yeah, because you ain't got no job.
Well, they got jobs.
No, it's a reference to a movie, which I never do because I never watch movies.
Friday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Shorty140 says, refund Warren. I was supporting her too, even though Bernie is my first pick. She lost me. Yeah, I think a lot of people were on that same boat, you know. I really liked her policy proposals. I think she's right on a lot of things. It just happened that Bernie is to the left of her and I support his policies a little more. But this move, it doesn't really speak well of her campaign.
Yeah, and there's still the tiny little chance that this wasn't her idea and she doesn't like it, well then you got a debate stage, you can bring it up and you can say how it's untrue. She could kill the story right now.
That's right.
If she wants to.
She could do that, so we'll see. Everett Bachara says, it's frustrating that Warren supporters are telling us to stand down and not fight when she fired the first shot. Bernie stands up for us, so we should stand up for him. It just reminds me of 2016 when we were told to fall in line. I know, and it's a very dangerous move on Warren's part.
She was telling her supporters to de-escalate.
Yes, that's true, but I think what he's referring to, or she's referring to, is that, you know, online you see a lot of blame on Bernie's supporters. In fact, the story we're about to do is gonna make that point, right? So I think that's what you're referring to. So let's talk a little bit about the conversation that went down on The View. So the ladies of The View had their own thoughts on the so-called feud between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Now, this is the feud where someone, or at least a few people from her campaign, leaked to CNN that Elizabeth Warren had a conversation with Bernie Sanders back in December of 2018, where Sanders allegedly told Warren that he didn't believe a woman could be elected as president. Now, we've talked about this a lot. We've provided evidence to indicate that he's very supportive of women. He encouraged her to run in 2016. So we know that that's not who Bernie Sanders is, but all of that doesn't really matter to the ladies of The View because they're gonna have a conversation sharing their opinions from the most ignorant standpoint I have seen. So let's take a look at the first clip.
I mean, everybody has conversations like that. Why is this a big story?
It's a big story because he hurt Hillary Clinton so much in the last election. And it's a big story because while he has a good reputation on Capitol Hill, he does as being a congenial senator with other senators, his supporters have a really bad reputation, meaning the Bernie bros. It's actually one of the few things that really connects liberal pundits and conservative female pundits together is there's just a level of misogyny. But he has a problem with women, and he has for a long time. Look, I don't want him another misogynist as president. No. Okay? I mean, I think we're all women in this country are sick of it, and I have always thought he has had a problem with women.
No one, God. Not a single person can show us evidence of him having problems with women.
But you had it right there, Meghan McCain. She doesn't like him, so why should a liberal?
So the media and his political opponents will paint this narrative. The media will assist them on that and just regurgitate stories without providing any evidence to back up these claims that he's a misogynist. And then that's it. That's the narrative, right? Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there's no proof. It doesn't matter if it's been debunked a million times with videos that we've shown you on this show, with the votes that he's cast when it comes to empowering women. None of that matters. None of that ever gets brought up. Look, this is how the media, they just single-handedly, constantly destruct any campaign or any candidate that they don't like.
And right there, it sounded like, I didn't watch the full thing because it's The View and I don't watch The View. But it sounded like Joy Behar initially was defending Bernie, kind of.
It sounded like she was saying that
at least saying it's a non-story, it's campaigning. So then someone, I think Meghan McCain said, oh, he's gonna do what he did before. And even Joy was like, oh yeah, no, he was bad in 2016.
He wasn't bad in 2016.
Exactly,
he's running in a primary, guys. What the hell? What do you think a primary is for? To play patty cakes? Is a primary to do like hopscotch on the debate stage? That's not what a primary is. He has to differentiate himself from his candidates.
And he was so nice to Hillary Clinton. They really don't think that there was a 2016 primary election.
Bernie was asked.
Hillary ran and Bernie was annoying on the side. They really do think that.
They do.
They don't think that we actually had a chance to choose between two different candidates. And sometimes it gets dirty, but 2016 was way less dirty than Hillary Clinton's campaign against Barack Obama.
100%.
It is so infuriating, and also we lived through that experience. So we went through this long primary, and then eventually Hillary Clinton is the nominee. So then Bernie Sanders decides, you know what? I disagree with her in a million different ways, but I'm gonna support her for president.
And campaign on her behalf.
And we, similarly, like Bernie Sanders, campaigned for her because it was obvious that she'd be much.
No, we did not campaign for her.
I said that people should vote for her in the same way that Bernie Sanders was saying it.
I don't think that's campaigning for her. I begrudgingly voted for her because I did not want
Okay, then we disagree. But I like you can read in Bernie Sanders' book, he lays out there was never a doubt in his mind that she would be a million times better than Donald Trump. And I felt similarly. And we were attacked at the time for advocating along the lines of Bernie Sanders. And the insult to injury is, after all of that, after being attacked, now years later, it's as if none of that actually happened. And Bernie Sanders and all of his supporters just wanted Donald Trump to be president.
Look, during the debates in 2016, the primary debates, at one point, Bernie Sanders was asked about Hillary Clinton's emails. And what did he do? First of all, for any shady, dirty, below the belt politician, they would totally it would be a layup, right? They'd take that opportunity to bash Hillary Clinton. He didn't do that. He's like, I don't care about her emails. Let's talk about the issues.
He was so gentle, so polite to her.
No, but this is why.
And he gets no credit for everything he did to try to help her.
He never will, which is why, Bernie, take the gloves off. They're gonna go after you no matter what. Obviously, don't do personal attacks. I don't think that doesn't suit anyone, and it's a bad idea. But I think that he needs to be a little more forceful in talking about how his policies are better than everyone else's, in talking about how his record is better than everyone else's, in talking about how he has been consistent more than any other politician I have personally ever seen, okay? So he needs to, like, playing nice is not gonna get them to play fair with you, right? Yeah. So you're the best candidate, own it. And show the world, and don't let them, intimidate you from doing that. And I'm not saying he's being intimidated, but I just think that
I think he's being himself. I think this is who he is.
Yeah, but like the gloves need to come off when it comes to these smears, and he needs to fight back a little more aggressively. With that said, here's Abby Huntsman piling on.
I experienced it firsthand when I did the Bill Maher show. I was sitting on the Bill Maher panel with him, and I was young. I was like 24, 25, and he was doing his thing and talking with his friend like this.
Something?
And I mean,
we've shown a clip.
He basically didn't even realize I was sitting there or existed. It was kind of like this, and finally it got so bad that I had to literally physically grab his hand and take it down. But Do I think he's purposely trying to make people feel? No, but it looks bad. And I think over time it becomes a narrative, like you're saying, Megan. And in this environment, that doesn't go. It surprises me that he has the following that he does, even with women, when he does things like this.
Hey, they acknowledge that he has a following with women. That they don't usually do that.
Okay, so Abby Huntsman was offended by Bernie Sanders and his body language. His body language was not inviting or nice enough for her. I mean, look, I do this show with Cenk every day, right? Usually. Sometimes after I make a point, I look him in the eye and I make a point. Sometimes he doesn't look me right back in the eye and make a point. He looks at the camera. I am offended by that. How dare he look into the camera rather than address me by looking me in? Like it's stupid. It's stupid, right? These are nonsense talking points that have nothing to do with policy, that do nothing to improve the lives of the American people. They're not having a single discussion about what he has to offer or what he's bringing to the table. Not once did that come up in the context of this conversation that the New York Times has referred to as the most important political news show in America, okay? Not once. This is how gross, shallow, and superficial our media is. But there's more. Let's go to Joy Behar.
I just hope that when the candidate emerges, whoever it is, maybe Biden, maybe Klobuchar, I don't know who it's going to be yet. I just hope that all the Bernie people get behind that candidate. I hope that they are not as self-destructive as a lot of Trump voters who vote against their own interests.
It's ahistorical. That's simply not an accurate description of what happened in 2016.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because they don't cite any evidence of anything they're saying and they get away with it. And they still get these glowing reports in the New York Times about how this is the most important political show in the country. Finally, Meghan McCain and Sunny Hostin.
I had a conversation with a politician last night, and we were talking about the likelihood of there being a fractured convention. Is everyone should at this point expect it, because I don't think Bernie and his supporters are going to let this go much like they did last time. And it will hurt the principle just like he really hurt Hillary.
Hillary's book, she says some of his supporters, the so-called Bernie bros, took to harassing my supporters online. It got ugly and more than a little sexist. That's from Hillary.
Remember in the close-up of his face, it looked like he was sucking on a lemon when they were showing her, and then his brother made this whole thing, and it wasn't the show of dignity and solidarity that I think she had hoped.
Oh my God, did you guys, his facial expression just was not it was not nice. And I don't know what he was thinking. And he didn't exactly say anything offensive to women or about women.
Anything,
but his face, I just didn't like his face, you know? His face wasn't good. So New York Times, please write about my expert commentary. I get paid millions of dollars to sound like a moron on daytime television.
And she is 50 times more important than you and I combined, which is crazy. I'm just glad that she's looking out for Hillary Clinton, who she totally supported. She's always looking out for us, Meghan McCain. She just has the best interests of the Democratic Party at heart.
I know, John,
it's
but
so fake and disingenuous.
She's just looking out for the millions of men and women who are gonna take to the polls and might not know that Bernie Sanders has a face that I don't like.
Exactly.
Okay? And then finally, Whoopi Goldberg. Just one more video on this.
Listen, Bernie bros, if you're out there, and keep your emails because I don't care. But this is really about the country. This is not about being a bro or a girlfriend. It's not about any of that. If he is not the candidate, get your behinds in gear. Get your behinds in gear. And stop pretending that you're looking for him to actually do something that's meaningful for everybody in the nation. Either we're going to try to make this change together, whoever the person is, or we're not. And it'd be nice to do it with you, but we can do it without you. We don't want to, but you can't do what you did 4 years ago. It's just not right.
They didn't. They were twice as supportive of Hillary Clinton as Hillary Clinton's primary supporters were of Barack Obama the first time around. That is just purely factual, verifiable information that nobody accepts.
I just want to understand something because there's a giant contradiction in this entire segment. So did Bernie supporters cost Hillary Clinton the election? Or didn't they? Because in that last clip we showed you, Whoopi Goldberg is like, we can do this without you guys, okay? We can do this without you Bernie bros. But okay, if that were the case, first of all, this whole conversation is about how Bernie ruined Hillary Clinton's chances of winning when, by the way, is that okay? Is that okay to just excuse all the mistakes and flaws of a candidate and blame everything on their opponent? Like, has there been a conversation about what Hillary Clinton did wrong?
I mean, I think everybody wants to have one reason that makes it so that they were right. Everybody has, the election came down to one thing, and it's the thing that I was warning you about. That's everyone. It's a different thing for different people, but that's very human to think that it's the one thing that I was right about. It's just so frustrating because I love Whoopi in so many movies and in Star Trek: The Next Generation. She was great. To see her spread the Bernie bro thing, like how many times do we need to look at the actual base of support for these different candidates? It's just not true. It's just not true. And it's also incredibly inconvenient for people like the cast of The View and probably some other people too, that when this thing is done, if Bernie is not the nominee, and I hope to God that he is, but if he's not, yes, he's going to, it doesn't matter if it's Biden, if it's Buttigieg, if it's Warren, if it's whoever, he's going to try to get them elected. The same as he did in 2016. They want to pretend that it didn't happen there. They want to pretend that it's not going to happen. It did and it will. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully he's the nominee. But if he's not, he's going to do everything he can, far more than almost everyone else in the country, to try to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get reelected. Man, just take note of how viciously someone who wants to challenge the system gets attacked, right? You call out corruption, you call out the most powerful people in the country, you want to create a system that's more equal for everyone, and they will come at you viciously. They don't even need evidence for their smears. None. Anyway, we got to take a break. When we come back, we will switch gears, talk about something completely different. David Dayen over at the American Prospect has a piece on some of Buttigieg's campaign advisors, and it involves Wells Fargo. So we'll be back with that and more.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Welcome back to TYT, a few TYT lives, and yeah, let me do some TYT lives. Eddie Odell says, funny how Meghan McCain, Miss I'm the conservative daughter of a conservative senator, is saying that Bernie behaved wrongly toward Hillary Clinton. I guess the 60-some rallies he was at to support her weren't enough. Also, I mean, no one was more vicious toward Hillary Clinton than the Republican Party, like as a whole. I mean, think about the lock her up chants and all that stuff, but it's okay when Republicans are accused of things like rape, for instance. How many people have accused Trump of rape?
Dozens.
And doesn't matter. Those are people who went out publicly on the record and made these accusations.
One just recently.
Yeah, and one just recently.
Doesn't matter.
The Bad Lib says Bernie hurt Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton shot herself in the foot multiple times, and he just pointed out that she was bleeding. But that's the thing, he's not allowed to do that. He's not allowed to run a campaign.
Yeah, and look, if on the scale of dirtiness, he was a 2 to her, to Bernie's supporters, the media was a maxed out 10. They were more critical of Bernie supporters than Trump supporters, honestly. Like there was that brief thing about them being deplorable or whatever, and then everybody's like, no, you have to be super nice to them. Not like those damn Bernie bros. You can make fun of them all you want, but you have to be really nice and diplomatic to the Trump supporters.
I'm gonna say something that's gonna upset like literally everyone, and I don't really care. Every single campaign, every single one of them has supporters that are annoying and overzealous and will harass the crap out of you if you don't say everything that they like, right? And in the way that they like it. Every single campaign. Are those loud individuals on social media representative of all the supporters for that particular candidate? No, they're not. They're just not. And so if you can't handle being on social media, if social media causes you extreme emotional distress, then get off of social media. But don't generalize about all the supporters for any particular candidate, because people get fired up. There's a lot on the line here, so.
Agreed.
All right, let's move on. We're done with that story.
Let's talk about it more.
Okay, so David Dane over at the American Prospect broke a pretty big story about one of Pete Buttigieg's campaign advisors. This is an individual who actually is currently working as a lawyer on behalf of Wells Fargo. A compliance attorney with Miscreant Bank Wells Fargo is part of a small group advising the Pete Buttigieg campaign on antitrust policy, the Prospect has learned. The attorney, Joseph Vardner, continues to work at Wells Fargo while advising the campaign. Emails between members of the advisory group and campaign officials would go to his Wells Fargo email address. Now, the Buttigieg campaign has said that they have not sent any material or any information to that email address. I don't really care about that. It's not really important. What is important is that you have someone with close ties to Wells Fargo advising Pete Buttigieg on antitrust issues. And that's a very serious policy topic that does need to be addressed in this country, right? You have all these monopolies, all of these companies buying up smaller companies. And so I am not comfortable with someone representing Wells Fargo advising Pete Buttigieg on this issue. And by the way, the Pete Buttigieg campaign hasn't denied this. But before I get to their statement on this, let me also note Wells Fargo, of course, has been at the head of a series of overlapping scandals in recent years, from fake accounts to force-placed insurance. So, by the way, that insurance controversy led to people getting their homes foreclosed by Wells Fargo wrongly, suggesting significant weaknesses in their compliance regime. Senior Wells Fargo executives are now under criminal investigation for their conduct in the fake accounts scandal. And I wanted to show you one of the ads that they put out following all these scandals. They tried to like rebrand themselves and say like, no, we're the good guys. Here's a little snippet from that video.
We know the value of trust. We were built on it. Back when the country went west for gold, we were the ones who carried it back east. We always found the way. Until we lost it. But that isn't where the story ends. It's where it starts again, with a complete recommitment to you.
So that ad was so ridiculous, and it was made fun of by so many people, including Matt Taibbi, that Brett Ehrlich put together just this hilarious spoof video on the ad that I wanted to share with you. I'm bringing it back. He made this for my show, No Filter. And I just want to remind you guys that during the time that all these controversies were happening, Facebook was also, being investigated. It was getting a lot of bad press. Same thing with Uber. So if you notice, they're mentioned in this spoof ad as well. But without further ado, here's Brett Ehrlich's genius work.
Hey, it's us, Facebook, Wells Fargo, and Uber. Remember how you liked us before we screwed you over? I mean, before you found out we screwed you over? Yeah, ever since then, it's been really hard for us. And even though we were penalized millions, nay, billions of dollars, we aren't done with our apology tour. Not because we're sorry, but because we still like your money as much as we did before, and we want it back. And we're spending millions of dollars on commercials during the NBA Finals because we thought if it went us, LeBron, us, Kevin Durant, us, a pregnant lady, your uncle, our CEO, close-ups of beautiful, diverse actors, then beer, then maybe, just maybe you'd end up liking us as much as you like those other things. Like some weird corporate Ludovico technique. Oh, you don't know what a Ludovico technique is? Never mind, it's nothing. But please don't close your eyes during this. Surge pricing is fine. Surge pricing is fine. Fraud's not odd. Fraud is not odd. Fraud is all I thought it would. Uber, Wells Fargo, and Facebook. Like us, even a fraction of how much we like your money.
So how good does someone feel about the fact that someone working for Wells Fargo right now is advising Pete Buttigieg on antitrust policy?
Yeah. I feel weird jumping back into the substance of the story now because that was really funny.
Yeah.
But really fast, when everyone was going west to get gold, we brought it back. So, what does that mean? For all I know, those people were bandits. They might have been killing people on the way. What a weird thing to brag about.
It's not about
whenever a gangster would drive to do a drive-by, who do you think was driving them? Okay, you had wagons. Why are you bragging about that?
Okay.
Anyway, okay, so on the substance, here's the thing. This is a reminder of why the last couple of days of the news cycle has been so frustrating, because in the background, Buttigieg has just been like giggling. He's been running
wine caves with Wells Fargo.
Yeah, he's doing the Joker dance through a wine cave. It's been like a year that he's been running. Could you list 10 facts about him?
About Pete Buttigieg?
Yeah. Maybe you can. You could name
You mean
some
like
stuff
the
about
average American?
what he's actually done, what his work history represents, who he's actually surrounding himself with. We know almost nothing. We here at TYT, and by that I mean the people who do the investigative work, have done a great job to try to flesh out things about him. But the rest of the media has just been like, ho hum, we're not picking up any of that. And there have been like no questions. He is sailing through to the first contests with almost no knowledge of what he would do if he were to be elected, who he actually is. And so, good thing that David Dayen is doing this work.
Well, by the way, so the American Prospect is one of the independent media outlets that I really, really hope you guys will support. I know that they had a fundraising effort, so if you go to the American Prospect, I'm sure you can find a link where you can help support them and donate money. Just want to give them a shout out because they do excellent work, and as you know, David Dayen comes in and collaborates with us, and so I really appreciate his great journalism, and this is an example of it. So you know what? Let's get into some more of the nitty gritty here. So as I mentioned earlier, the Buttigieg campaign is not denying this. In fact, Sean Savitt responded to David Dayen and said he, meaning the Wells Fargo attorney, is one of dozens of volunteer policy advisors on economic issues, none of whom are compensated. But that's not the problem. Like, it doesn't matter whether he's compensated or not. He's advising the Buttigieg campaign. I want to know how much he gave to the Buttigieg campaign or how much Wells Fargo gave to the Buttigieg campaign. That's what's relevant, right?
Well, and also, look, I guess I care if you're paying him now, but I have a thing, I have this feeling that he might be looking ahead to the money that can be made later, once he becomes president. What a ridiculously insulting and condescending response to say he's not being paid right now. It's charity for him. That's why he's doing it.
I know, right? I mean, but again, this kind of goes back to a point I've been making, not just about the Buttigieg campaign, but campaigns in general. They think that Americans don't know what's going on with corruption and undue influence by corporations, but they know. They feel it in their pocketbooks every single day. And so that kind of response is not gonna bode well for people who are paying even a little bit of attention. So let me give you more from the Prospect. The policy that Vardner and others were working on for the Buttigieg campaign through the summer never came out. Sources indicate that the plan cooled sometime after Sonal Shah, herself a former Goldman Sachs and Google executive, joined the campaign as a policy director. Okay, that's just information. We're giving you guys information. We're telling you what his campaign consists of, okay? The campaign appears to be employing tactics right out of the corporate monopoly playbook, imitating the way large firms use their leverage to impinge on the rights of their employees, despite Buttigieg releasing a plan for worker empowerment. So what does that mean? He has people working on his campaign sign not only an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, but also a non-compete agreement, meaning that if someone's working on his campaign and decides to quit and maybe go work at a different campaign, they wouldn't be able to do so under a non-compete agreement. Now, this is a problem because, first of all, it's super unusual for a campaign to do this. The only campaign that we know of that used this tactic was Trump's 2016 presidential campaign.
Well, that can't be true because the media has been so hot to make comparisons between Trump and Democratic candidates that if there was this clear, unique thing, they would have to point that out. No,
weird that they have.
Sorry, what I'm referring to in case it's not clear is Bernie Sanders was being talked to, I think, by the New York Times editorial board, being interviewed, and they pointed out that he, like Trump, gives speeches at rallies. I'm not even joking.
Oh my God, it's amazing. So that's what's going on with his campaign. By the way, one individual quit his campaign and he was asked to sign the non-compete agreement. He refused, and I'm glad he refused. It's an unnamed person for obvious reasons. But the reason why this non-compete agreement is pressured, like employees are pressured to sign it, is because it really limits the labor pool for workers. So you'll see these tactics employed at a lot of corporations. It's also used on janitors, summer camp counselors, hairstylists, people who work in the media. And so it's highly problematic from a labor standpoint. And so that's what Buttigieg is doing. These are the people who are advising him. These are the things you should know as we go into the Democratic debate in Iowa tonight. With that said, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be back with more news.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.